So it's finally time to start on box number 1. I'm going to give myself kind of a break and do the sort of an easier one for the first one. I'm going to use the new 45-degree sled that I built, and I'm going to use some of the wood that I've already milled. Now what I want to try with this though is I want to have the grain going vertically. I'm just curious if that's going to sort of last over the long run. Most of the time you see people doing boxes with the grain going horizontal, but I just thought that'd be kind of more interesting. I'm going to do a fairly small box, so this is going to be like the width of the box as well, and I'm also going to try gluing in the bottom. Oh, related to the vertical grain, this is a box that I made last year after taking a router box making class, and I used some flooring which I glued together into panels, and then I made this into a vertical box, and sure enough, this thing is now quite difficult to open, and in some places you can sort of see there's gaps forming between the wood. But with this one, I only sealed the outside. Now I've read or heard from a long time woodworker that as long as you seal the wood completely, there's no way for moisture to get in, and therefore you shouldn't really have the movement of the wood. But with this box, I didn't seal the inside, I only sealed the outside. So with this new one, I'm going to make sure that I seal it all the way around after I've made the box, and I'm kind of going to see if the wood does sort of change shape over the years. And also related, I'm going to also make a solid wood base for it and glue it in. Again, that's sort of something that people say not to do, but then I have these boxes. These are sort of old cigar boxes. I have this one and I have this one, and in both cases there's just sort of a glued on wooden bottom. This one is sort of multiple pieces, this is a single piece, and there's no movement. I mean, it's not flexing or anything like that, and this one isn't even sealed on the inside. So I'm going to try that first and see how it goes. I'll be able to sort of monitor it over the period of time and see if there is any sort of movement, and I'll know for the future whether it's a good idea or not. So once again, we'll see. So this is the piece of wood that I want to use to make the first box, and I've discovered that it has a bit of a bow in it. But I've discovered that if I took a piece of cardboard from a sandpaper wrapper, it was exactly the right height in order to counteract that. So I've made a sled for my planer with just a piece of hardboard and a bit of wood at the end, and I'm going to run it through like this with the spacer in between, and then try to flatten that out. So the wood got sucked off the sled as it was going through, so I'm going to hot glue the wood to the sled. So on the second time through, the hot glue let go, so I'm going to put a lot more hot glue on here. Okay, that worked pretty well with the extra hot glue on it, and it's nice and flat. I don't know if that shows up on camera, but that's nice and flat. So now I'm going to remove the board from the sled and run it through the other way to true up the other side. There it comes. I think my problem with the sled initially is both sides are kind of slippery, so the hot glue wasn't really sticking to this. So the next time I use it, I'll rough it up a bit more before I put the hot glue on. So now we'll peel all this hot glue off, and we'll run it through the other way. So here is the wood. It's got a little snipe here, but the snipe on the rest of it is actually, it looks pretty bad, but you can't even feel it. So I think that's going to be fine. I think it's just scuffed. But the important thing is, whoops. The important thing is that it is flat. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but I can certainly see it by eye that it's much flatter than it was. So I'm pretty pleased with that. So now, got a piece of wood. We'll go on to actually build a box. I'm actually going to use the other side of the 45-degree sled to make the square cuts for the bottom and the top of each piece. So the miters look pretty good. I'm just going to cut the dado in the bottom for the bottom of the box. I'll cut that on the table saw. So that worked out pretty well. I got the dados cut in all the pieces. So now I'll glue it up. I got my blue tape. I got my straight edge. So I will line everything up and glue it up. Now I've learned from doing other boxes already that it makes sense to tape the inside so that there's less glue squeeze out to deal with on the inside of the box. I'm going to set it on its top, so I'll cut off some of this excess tape. Alright, here we go. Glue. Got my glue, got my brush. Put a bit of paper down. Looks good. Seems square. So 3 of the 4 miters worked out okay. This one's got a bit of a gap in it. Not sure if that's showing up. I will be putting splines in, so that'll obviously make it strong enough, and I'm hoping I can just fill that in. We'll see when we get to that point. I've also planed down another piece of wood, a little bit thinner, to use as the bottom. So I'm going to cut it to shape, and I'll be gluing it into the rabbet on the bottom. So here's the bottom. Just sort of pops in. It's not exactly square, but I think it's fine. So now I'm going to sand the bottom flat, break all the edges, sand this down, and then glue this in. So here we go. I'm also going to do 220 grit on the inside of both the box and the bottom. I'm going to do the same thing with the tape on the inside, because that did actually really work really well on the corners. I don't have any squeeze out at all there. And I'll do the inside as well. So that's what it looks like on the inside too. So, pop this out again. Should be in the right spot. So we'll glue it in and see what happens. So now I'll weigh this down and we'll check it out later on. So I've seen a video on YouTube about filling in gaps like that with a bit of glue and then like a brazing rod. This is like a brazing rod? That may be the wrong term, but I got a screwdriver which I'm going to force it closed with. So we'll just put a bit of glue in here. Glue, 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 glue. And then just push it. Okay, well there you go. That worked out really well. That was easy. The other corners all kind of look better, so I think that'll work. So now I'm going to set it up for doing the splines. I have a flat top tooth blade for doing splines. I've used it a grand total of once. So we'll take out the combination blade and put that in. So here's my spline making jig. Of the jigs and things that I've made, this is really the only one that sort of turned out solid enough, square enough to use. So I don't mind pulling this guy out and starting to use it. I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch from each side. That. Those look pretty good. Now I'll set it up for the other side. So I have a strip. It's already cut to fit in the splines that the flat top blade makes. So I'm just gonna cut a bunch of sections of this and glue them into the slots. Okay, so there's all the splines glued in. So now, again, let glue dry. So that sanded out pretty nicely. All these splines look pretty good. There's one that's not seated exactly in the bottom of the slot, but otherwise I think they're okay. One thing I have sort of thought of with this box is that the wood that I use is rather thick. So what I'm going to do is put a round over along the top edge to sort of soften the thickness a little bit. Fortunately, the router table is already set up with a round over bit, so I should just be able to run it through here and get my round over. I ran it through a number of times on each side, trying to get rid of as much of this burning as I could. There's still some there. I'm going to try to sand that off. Alright, that's to 120, so we'll do it to 220 and we'll apply some finish. There we be. Now we'll apply some finish to this bad boy. So I'm going to finish it with the water-based Varathane. I'm thinking that would give it a good enough seal and be good for my test to see how long it'll last with the vertical grain and the glued in bottom and everything. So I've already wiped it down with a shop cloth. So now we'll mix this up and apply it. Okay, that's coat number 1. So here is box 1 finished, except for one little operation. I learned this from Steve Ramsey. He likes to sort of take some brown paper and buff the final coat of the finish. So I will follow his lead on that. I think it does sort of give it a nice kind of luster. So I'm pretty pleased with the outcome. I think this is a bit thick, so I'll work with thinner wood, I think, for the following boxes. I did get a little bit of blowout when I was doing the splines, but overall I think it's not bad. So now the big test will start. I will put this into my office and sort of use it and see what happens to the corners. The miters, I think, are pretty tight. I'm pretty pleased with how the miters turned out, which was the one of the big tests for this box. The vertical grain, the miters, and gluing in a solid wood bottom. Those are the big 3 tests for this this box. So now that this guy's done, move on to box number 2.